welcome to this extraordinary event, a joint address to Parliament by His Excellency Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine. I thank all those who have made it possible for us to hear from President Zelensky today, whether here in the chamber or by video link. J'invite maintenant le Premier ministre.
I now ask the Prime Minister to take the floor. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chers parlementaires.
Dear parliamentarians, friends and colleagues, good morning and thank you for being here today to welcome a courageous and exceptional leader.
Zelensky, on behalf of parliamentarians and on behalf of all Canadians, it is an honour to welcome you to our House. Mr. President, Volodymyr, you are a friend. Canadians and Ukrainians are friends, and they have been for a long time. Our people share deep historical ties. In the early 20th century, a massive wave of Ukrainian immigrants came to Canada. Many of them settled in the Canadian prairies. They worked the land. They built churches distinguished by their beautiful spires, and they helped shape Canada in significant ways. Notre pays compte aujourd'hui.
Today, there are 1.4 million Ukrainian Canadians in our country, making it the second largest Ukrainian diaspora in the world. Whether as farmers, producers, scientists, community leaders, athletes, or frontline workers, Ukrainian Canadians continue to make a tremendous contribution to our country. But the friendship between Canada and Ukraine is not only based on this shared history, it is also based on our shared values.
Volodymyr, in the years I've known you, I've always thought of you as a champion for democracy. And now, democracies around the world are lucky to have you as our champion. Hear, hear. Your courage and the courage of your people inspires us all. You're defending the right of Ukrainians to choose their own future. And in doing so, you're defending the values that form the pillars of all free, democratic countries. Freedom, human rights, justice, truth, international order. These are the values you're risking your life for as you fight for Ukraine and Ukrainians. Beyond that, you're inspiring democracies and democratic leaders around the world to be more courageous, more united, and to fight harder for what we believe in. You remind us that friends are always stronger together. With allies and partners, we're imposing crippling sanctions to make sure Putin and his enablers in Russia and Belarus are held accountable. Today, in line with our European Union partners, I can announce that we have imposed severe sanctions on 15 new Russian officials, including government and military elites who are complicit in this illegal war.
Canada will continue to support Ukraine with military equipment as well as financial and humanitarian assistance. And we will be there to help rebuild once the aggressor is repelled.
In Canada, we like to root for the underdog. We believe that when a cause is just and right, it will always prevail, no matter the size of the opponent. This doesn't mean it'll be easy. Ukrainians are already paying incalculable human costs. This illegal and unnecessary war is a grave mistake, and Putin must stop it now. Le mépris.
Vladimir Putin's blatant disregard for human life is absolutely unacceptable. Canada continues to demand that Russia stop targeting civilians and end this unjustifiable war.
Ukrainians are standing up to authoritarianism. And as parliamentarians united in this House today, and all Canadians, we stand with you. As friends, you can count on our unwavering and steadfast support. And now, it is my great privilege to introduce to you all the President of Ukraine, our friend, Volodymyr Zelensky.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister, dear Justin, members of the government, members of the Parliament, all distinguished guests, friends. Before I begin, I would like you to understand my feelings and feelings of all Ukrainians, as far as it is possible. Our feelings over the last 20 days. 20 days of a full-scale aggression of Russian Federation after 8 years of fightings in Donbass region. Can you only imagine? Imagine that on 4 a.m., each of you start hearing bomb explosions, severe explosion. Justin, can you imagine hearing your children hear all these severe explosions, bombing of airport, bombing of Ottawa airport, tens of other cities of your wonderful country. Can you imagine that? Cruise missiles are falling down on your terrain, and your children are asking you what happened, and you are receiving the first news which infrastructure objects have been bombed and destroyed by Russian Federation. And you know how many people already died. Can you only imagine what words, how can you explain to your children that you just full-scale aggression just happened in your country? You know that this is war to annihilate your state, your country. You know that this is the war to subjugate your people. And on second day, you receive notifications that huge columns of military equipment are entering your country, crossing the border. They're entering small cities. They are giving siege. They're encircling cities. And they start to shell civil neighborhoods. They bomb school buildings. They destroyed kindergarten facilities. Like in our city, city of Sumy, like in city of Ochtyrka. Imagine that someone is taking siege, laying siege to Vancouver. Can you just imagine that for a second? And all these people who are left in such city. And this is exactly the situation that our city of Mariupol is suffering right now. And they are left without heat or hydro, or without means of communicating, almost without food, without water. seeking shelter in bomb shelters. Dear Justin, dear guests, can you imagine that every day you receive memorandums about the number of casualties, including among women and children? You've heard about the bombings. Currently, we have 97 children that died during this war. Can you imagine famous CN Tower in Toronto? If it was hit by Russian bombs. Of course, I don't wish this on anyone, but this is our reality in which we live. We have to contemplate, we have to see where the next bombing will take place. Your church square, we have a Freedom Square in the city of Harden. Our Babin-Yar, the place where victims of Holocaust were buried, and it has been bombed by the Russians. Imagine that Canadian facilities have been bombed similarly as our buildings and memorial places are being bombed. A number of families have died. Every night is a horrible night. Russians are shelling from all kinds of artillery, from tanks. They're hitting civilian infrastructure. They're hitting big buildings. Can you imagine that there is a fire starting at a nuclear power plant? And that's exactly what happened in our country. Each city that they are marching through, they're taking down Ukrainian flags. Can you imagine someone taking down your Canadian flags in Montreal and other Canadian cities? I know that you all support Ukraine. We've been friends with you, Justin, but also I would like you to understand, and I would like you to feel this, what we feel every day. We want to live, and we want to be victorious. We want to prevail for the sake of life. Can you imagine when you call your friends, your friendly nation, and you ask, please close the sky, close the airspace, please stop the bombing. How many more cruise missiles have to fall on our cities until you make this happen? And they, in return, they express their deep concerns about the situation. When we talk with our partners, and they say, please hold on a little longer. Some people are talking about trying to avoid the escalation. And at the same time, in response to our aspiration to become members of NATO, we also do not hear a clear answer. Sometimes we don't see obvious things. It's a dire straits, but it also allowed us to see who our real friends are over the last 20 days, and as well 8 previous years. I'm sure that you've been able to see clearly what's going on, and I'm addressing all of you. Canada has always been steadfast in their support. You've been a reliable partner to Ukraine and Ukrainians, and I'm sure this will continue. You've offered your help, your assistance at our earliest request. You supply us with the military assistance, with humanitarian assistance. You've imposed serious sanctions. At the same time, we see that, unfortunately, they did not bring the end to the war. You can see that our cities like Kharkiv, Mariupol, and many other cities are not protected just like your cities are protected, Edmonton, Vancouver. You can see that Kyiv is being shelled and bombed, city of Ivano-Frankivsk. It used to be, we were a very peaceful country, peaceful cities, but now they're being constantly bombarded. Basically, what I'm trying to say that we all need to do, you all need to do more to stop Russia, to protect Ukraine, and by doing that, to protect Europe from Russian threat. They're destroying everything, memorial complexes, schools, hospitals, housing complex. They already killed 97 Ukrainian children. We are not asking for much. We're asking for justice, for real support, which will help us to prevail, to defend, to save life all of the world. Canada is leading in these efforts, and I'm hoping that other countries will follow the same suit. We're asking for more of your leadership, and please take more, greater part in these efforts, Justin and all of our friends of Ukraine, all friends of the truth. Please understand how important it is for us to close our airspace from Russian missiles and Russian aircrafts. I hope you can understand. I hope you can increase your efforts. You can increase sanctions so they will not have a single dollar to fund their war effort. Commercial entities should not be working in Russia. Probably you know better than many in any other countries that this attack on Ukraine, it's their attempt to annihilate Ukrainian people, and there is nothing else to it. This is their main objective. It's actually the war against Ukrainian people. And it's an attempt to destroy everything that we as Ukrainians do. It's an attempt to destroy our future, to destroy our nation, our character. You Canadians, you know very well all this. That's why I'm asking you, please do not stop in your efforts. Please expand your efforts to bring back peace in our peaceful country. I believe, and I know that you can do it. And we are part of the anti-war coalition, and jointly I'm sure that we'll achieve results. I would like to also ask our Ukrainian diaspora in Canada. This is a historical moment, and we need your support, your practical support. And we hope that with your practical steps, you will show that you are part of the modern Ukrainian history. Please remember, this is a practical, modern-day history of Ukraine. We want to live. We want to have peace. I'm grateful to every one of you in the Parliament of Canada who is present there, to every Canadian citizen. I am very grateful to you, Justin. I am grateful to Canadian people, and I am confident that together we will overcome and will be victorious. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you to Canada.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now invite the Honourable George Fury, Speaker of the Senate, to say a few words.
President Zelensky, Prime Minister Trudeau, Chief Justice Wagner, Speaker Rota, fellow parliamentarians, distinguished guests, Mesdames et Messieurs. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, it is a great honour and privilege for me to thank you for your very powerful and inspiring words.
on behalf of all senators, members of the House of Commons, and indeed on behalf of all Canadians, it is my honour and privilege to thank you for your very powerful and inspiring words today. Please know, Mr. President, that Canadians stand with you. We know what is at stake. You are battling for your people, for your country, and for all of us who believe in peace and democracy, in truth and justice.
Warning. Censorship. Warning. Censorship. Warning. Censorship. Warning. Censorship. Warning.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Tuesday, March the 15th, 2022. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you about my co-host, folks. You know, they say you should beware the Ides of March, but I don't beware the Ides of March when I get to talk to my friend out west, because she would never betray me. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
David, I'm great. Look at you shoehorning random trivia into your Ides of March greeting with me. I totally forgot that today was the 15th of March. Historical significance, I suppose. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yes, for all those in the cesarean section, a very important date indeed.
Oh, David, that's the best. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's snowing here. It's about 1 degree. It's supposed to be going up to 17 in a few days. Yeah, I know. It's a roller coaster. And you know, it's funny. Speaking of March and beware the Ides of March, I've always been asked if someone was coming to the Greater Toronto area for the first time, what would be the best month and the worst month? And I think the best month, Sheila, it is the month of September, because you get those summer hot days and it cools off in the evening. Beautiful sleeping weather, like they say. March, it's neither winter, it's not spring. It's this hybrid where the snowbanks are melting and you see all the Tim Horton and McDonald cups and the dog feces, and it's just so disgusting. That's how I feel. I don't know about you out in Alberta. Best and worst months.
I don't know. I definitely wouldn't say September, because September is a grab bag of disaster. It can be blistering hot, and then like 3 days later, you're like, oh, I guess I should have covered my garden, because we got a big dump of snow. So
yes.
You never really know what you're going to get out here in Alberta. I guess maybe June is okay, but that's also kind of thunderstorm season here. So I don't know. You just got to be prepared for the weather here. I know even last week I was in Calgary with some members of the Rebel team, including some people from head office, and I watched the thermometer on my Jeep slowly drop as I was making the 4-hour drive back to my house. I think it was like, I don't know, -3 or something when I was in Calgary. And by the time I got home that evening, it was -21 when I got home.
Unbelievable. But you know what, Sheila, because you always bust my chops about my vehicle, fess up to the audience, you don't have a real Jeep in terms of, a Wrangler Rubicon. You've got like the SUV Jeep, don't you?
I have a Trailhawk, and I also have
Trailhawk.
I have a Trailhawk, and I have the Grand Cherokee, the diesel, the 3-liter diesel with the Mercedes-Benz engine in there. I have one of those two sitting in the driveway, and I'm waiting for my daughter to turn 16 so she can drive it. So those are both pretty real Jeeps, Mr. Egg Beater for a car.
Yeah, well, tell us how it goes the next time you take one of those vehicles on the Jeep Jamboree, okay? So there you go. Sheila, enough with the weather and auto talk.
I'm not mocked by you and your little electric car. I just won't.
Plug-in hybrid, actually. Sheila, what is it that we're trying to do here other than weather and automobile talk?
You know what? I am trying to stay your friend, and it's getting tougher and tougher all the time as you continue to make fun of me when you clearly have no right to. Anyway, I should tell everybody what we're doing here before we get into the news of the day, because it's a real stuffed pierogi of a day today. It is the Rebel News daily live stream. It used to just be hosted on Friday by Ezra Levant, but then the pandemic struck. There's more news than ever, and the best way to interact with the news and each other and our viewers seems to be in live form for an hour every day. I really like it. But then Joe Biden got elected. Big tech didn't have to pretend anymore, and they censored a whole host of conservative channels, including ours. They completely demonetized us over on YouTube. we're not kicked off yet, but the clock is ticking there, I think, for sure. And one of my biggest stresses in the day is to make sure that our videos don't kill the YouTube channel. So that's another point that I should make. If you are watching us on YouTube, if you want the full uncensored version, you better find us on another platform like Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U. And that should bring me into the next thing. So while we are currently streaming on YouTube, because they kind of don't want us there, so that's how you get more of us, we're also over on Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U. Those are 3 free speech platforms that don't care about your politics, and they give you the opportunity to support the work that we do completely willingly. So Rumble allows you to send a rant. If you send one of those, a paid chat, David or myself will read it on air. Likewise with an Odyssey hyper chat. That's their paid chat over there. And what did I forget? Super U. A Super U shout. You can send one of those to us, and that's their version of a paid chat, and we will read it on air. Send us a question, a comment, a story idea. And we are also in our 4th week of streaming on Getter, and I think that's going well. I think it's no hitches so far, and I think the Getter people appreciate it. So if you're watching us on Getter, hello. And if you're watching us on YouTube, say goodbye to YouTube and just go on to the other platforms, because there's going to be a point at which in the show, although we've been pretty good lately, where we might have to say goodbye to YouTube and move over to one of those other platforms, because YouTube is pretty strict with the things that we can and can't say on their platform. They are supposed to be the digital public square, but there's only room for one set of ideas there.
Indeed, which they call disinformation if you have a contrary set of ideas, Sheila.
Until
even though
CNN says it, and then it's fine.
That's right. Yeah, even if it's factual, but what do the facts have to matter? And speaking of disinformation, I see one of our top stories today. Justin Trudeau says he has a plan to fight Russia's disinformation. And part of that plan, is it to fight liberal disinformation? And does this fight on Russia disinformation, I assume this is more than just getting RT bumped off the airwaves?
Well, I wonder what this means, specifically Russian disinformation, because we've got a real problem with CBC disinformation. They've had to retract 2 stories about the convoy, claiming that it was Russian-backed, apropos of literally nothing except for the host's fevered dreams about Russians under every bed. But on the flip side, as an Albertan who cares deeply about the oil patch, I welcome this new crackdown on environmental madness, because that's the real Russian disinformation around here. Russia's been funding the anti-oil sands, anti-pipeline, anti-fracking movement for the better part of a decade. They've been dumping money into offshore holding company, which then dumps money into San Francisco, into the big environmental charities there, and that just sends it out into the world. It's been greenwashed, and it ends up in places like Canada blocking our pipelines, because that secures Russia's stranglehold on Europe through Gazprom, because they, as North Americans, we can't develop liquefied natural gas and get it offshore. So if they are going to crack down on that nonsense, I'm not pro-censorship, but I'd like to see them sort this one out.
Indeed. And if, Justin Trudeau really wanted to do something tangible about the war in Ukraine, Sheila, how about this? Get rid of the carbon taxes and green light all the pipeline developments these liberals have crushed. It is this enormous price of oil that is indirectly, or directly, I should say, funding Putin's war machine. And the dependence of so many European nations on Russian oil that we could give an alternative to, but we can't. And the same goes for sleepy Joe Biden in the United States, Sheila. They're 2 faces of the same coin.
Yeah, they are the real oligarch enablers, really. The environmentalist movement and the politicians beholden to them. They're the ones lining the pockets of the oligarchs by not allowing North Americans to develop their energy resources. I do think it's interesting, though, because Justin Trudeau is pursuing this whole nonsense about Russian disinformation. But what does that mean? Does that mean actual Russian disinformation? Do they have to have proof that it is Russian? Or can you just go by what the lunatics on CBC say? Because they were the ones that were saying, oh, the convoy is Russian-backed. no proof whatsoever. They just said it was Russian-backed. They were the ones that also said that the convoy was foreign-funded, and that wasn't the case. Testimony at the Finance Committee, or I think it was actually the Public Safety Committee, from GoFundMe and Give, Send, Go, both said that the overwhelming majority of the donors to both convoy crowdfunding campaigns, they were Canadian. And yet, that scare, the Russian scare, was enough to, I guess, enable the government to do the thing that they wanted to do, and that was to cut off the funding to the convoy and seize bank accounts based on just nonsense cooked up at the CBC.
It is incredible. And again, we have to look south of the border, too, to get another measure of insanity, Sheila, I think. And that is, can you imagine the nuclear arms deal with Iran is being negotiated with an intermediary, which is Russia? Russia is doing the talking for the United States because the Iranian officials won't meet face to face. So you have to basically go into a hotel room and pass notes through Russia. And I think the world right now, Sheila, and I don't think this is disinformation, it is setting up for a real unholy axis of enemies, which would be Russia, Iran, China, and perhaps even North Korea into the mix. And the United States of America under the Biden administration thinks it's a good idea for Russia to negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran. This is insanity.
Well, and are we just pretending like Iranian missiles didn't strike in the vicinity of the U.S. consulate in Erbil, Iraq, where I was? So they're negotiating an energy deal with an adversarial foreign power that sent missiles, well, they say striking in the vicinity of the U.S. consulate in Erbil, northern Iraq, which I could see at one point from my hotel room when I was there a few years ago, documenting the return of the Christians after their genocide there. So the Americans are still negotiating an energy deal with Iran and have taken Keystone XL completely off the table. And I'm pretty sure that Calgary hasn't bombed anybody lately.
Yeah. It's astonishing. And as I understand, under the terms of this deal, Iran is also working on intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Oh, that's fun.
But
that's not going to scare the daylights out of Israel. You know what's going to happen? Israel's going to have to assassinate a few more Iranian scientists because we know where this is going.
100%. But what I'm getting at, Sheila, is that with Israel being in the neighborhood, you don't need an intercontinental ballistic missile.
No.
So where do you think those missiles would be pointed at, Sleepy Joe Biden? The world is upside down, and I'm not so much worried about disinformation, Sheila, as I'm worried about the media refusing, most of the mainstream media, that is, to report this reality that we see going on. I think a lot of people are completely unaware of what's happening.
Yeah, I was reading something written by Justin Trudeau's brother, Kyle Kemper, because I'm prepping for an interview with him. So we are going to have to cut the show today, like right at the bottom of the hour, because I have to get off here and then interview Kyle Kemper. And he pointed out that as early as 2019, like we think that it's bad now, but as early as 2019, 25% of the journalists in this entire country, and this is before the subsidies, before the bailouts, their salaries were paid directly by the federal government.
Oh, and by the way, one of those journalists, well, there's one fewer journalist getting his money from the federal government. We'll get to in a bit, but Alexa Lavoie, our wonderful Quebec City correspondent, Sheila, that video she had on that city news reporter, it is unbelievable. And, you know, folks, you got to check out that video. You got to see where the agenda of so many of these mainstream media people are. His problem is he played his cards openly. He took down, you know, the kabuki curtain and showed you who he really was and who he really, how he really believes. And even to the point, Sheila, which I found despicable, mocking the physical aspects of a woman who was involved with the Freedom Convoy.
Yeah, and he's no Mr. Universe himself, by the way. Glass houses, buddy.
Do they, with Mr. Universe, do they care about what the guy's face looks like, Sheila, or is it just muscles?
It's just muscles. And I don't even think they care if they're juiced straight up. I really don't.
Do you like that look, by the way? The muscles on the muscles, the triceps on the biceps?
Like a healthy man, but I don't like a guy who spends like all day in the gym. I'm not sure. I like muscles that actually do things.
Oh,
you know?
Okay.
You know, that like serve a purpose. Like, can you change a tractor tire? Stuff like that. I'm not sure if a guy who spends all day in the gym has the skill set to even change a tractor tire, let alone the muscle groups. You know what I mean? It's just different.
I knew one guy many years ago that was into that and had an extraordinary physique in terms of muscles. And the annoying thing, Sheila, is that he could not walk past any reflecting surface without stopping and posing. Is that where he loses you, Sheila?
Big time. Big time. Just
anyway.
Like I said, I like a healthy man. Did my chair just let itself down? Speaking of
Oh my goodness. It's been a bountiful harvest, I guess.
Yes, I'm too heavy for my chair.
No, we have super producer Efren in the room, and he wants us on the 15s, and we're already 2 minutes over to get to super chats. Do we have any in as of yet?
Let me take a peekaboo.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Tell Efron to settle down.
Either they're not provided or they haven't been posted. So, well, you know what? So many things to get to. Why don't we? Well, here's a video, and this is sort of newsy given it happened on Sunday morning. Patrick Brown, he's passing himself off as a winner, and he announced. Sorry, Sheila, I can't laugh when I read this.
I spent all day yesterday reading documents about Patrick Brown, so my brain is like fully refreshed with Patrick Brown's recent and I guess not so recent history. But by the way, speaking of Patrick Brown and journalists letting the mask slip, our Lincoln J, and I don't want to talk too much about it because it does feel like we're punching down because we're up here and this guy is like way down here. One of the journalists at the Patrick Brown event that our Lincoln J was covering, he got right off the rev limiter with Lincoln. Lincoln was just trying to work, do his little stand-up close on the media riser, and this guy came over and just completely interrupted the work that he was trying to do and acted like a lunatic, tried to ban us. I mean, it's so ridiculous. He tried to ban us from Brampton. Again, that's how you get more of us. We're going to be in Brampton so much now, you're going to be sick of us. But I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it because we're punching down. But
he deserves it, Sheila. He started it.
Media,
you know,
of course he did. Yeah. But I mean, this is just more of the media letting the mask slip. They're not even pretending anymore. And
right.
That's two of them in just a couple of days.
So shall we throw to the video featuring Patrick Brown, the lying liar, the crying crybaby, the shameless skirt chaser? What's that, Efren? We have one chat. One chat.
Oh, we got one chat. Do we got it? Let me just check. Let me refresh Slack. No, I don't have it yet, Efron. Come on.
That kind of makes us look desperate, doesn't it, Sheila? We have one chat.
A little, I am. Send us more chat. Maybe we could just do Patrick Brown's video and
good idea. Let's throw that video and fantastic. Are you guys ready for that? No, not yet. Okay. Anyway,
long show today is already.
Sorry, folks. It must be that snowstorm.
Okay. I'll talk about what I was doing yesterday as I was going through documents relating to Patrick Brown, and I ended up watching a lot of David Menzies' greatest hits from the pandemic because of it. As you may or may not know, Patrick Brown is currently trying to rewrite his history to become and I don't know why my voice always gets ridiculous when I say it, but Canada's first anti-lockdown mayor. That's what he says he was. And
What?
That's what he's basically, like, he was an early adopter of letting municipalities be more free.
For himself and his Barry buddies who like to play ice hockey. Yeah.
Bingo.
You didn't read the fine print, Sheila.
When you're not living by your own restrictions, I guess every day you're as free as a bird. But he was the guy who brutally imposed a lockdown on Brampton's children. He chained up the parks, stationed expensive security around the parks. And after he announced, I remembered, oh my goodness, I have an access to information document, 400 and some on pages, that I've been dreading reading because it's very Patrick Brown heavy and I don't like to go back to it. But it was about the city of Brampton, all their communications with the private security firm hired by Patrick Brown to brutally enforce the lockdown on Bramptonians, I think is how I would say it, including, enforcing the lockdown at the cemetery, at the parks, at the soccer field, where somehow they're like, oh, we should send the security guards to the soccer center because teenagers might be down there smoking dope between 8:30 in the morning and 1:30 in the afternoon. I'm like, have you ever met a wayward teenager? They're usually not even up before then, but okay, whatever. And the inflated pandemic rates that they were willing to pay Paladin Security to brutally enforce Patrick Brown's lockdown. And so it's a bit ridiculous to hear him say that he was the anti-lockdown mayor. He was the worst, including sending people to make sure that people were social distancing when they were taking pictures of the trees in bloom, much like Toronto.
And isn't Brampton's slogan the flower city, the garden city, something like that? But, Sheila,
you're not getting close enough to sniff any flowers. The Paladin was making sure of that.
Yeah, you better have a nose the size of an elephant, okay, to maintain that social distancing. But here was the really insidious thing. People will say, well, Sheila, Paladin security guards, they don't have the power to write bylaw infraction tickets, which is true. But this was the scheme, folks. They didn't have enough bylaw, and obviously police officers have better things to do when it comes to enforcing the law in Brampton, kind of like gangbanger gun crime, that sort of thing. So the Paladin security guards would be stationed at, children's playgrounds, baseball diamonds, soccer fields, what have you. And they were cemeteries, and they were paid professional snitches. So when they saw somebody doing something that they weren't supposed to, they could give a verbal warning when they were flipped the de rigueur bird. What they then did is got on their walkie-talkie or cell phone and talked to bylaw or law enforcement. We got a soccer field infraction here down near Earnscliffe. And sure enough, they'd, like Batman and Robin, rushing to the latest crime scene of the Joker. You'd have the bylaw officers come and give out the real harsh penalties. This is incredible, Sheila. And I remember a week would go by, it'd be like over 100 of these bylaw infractions would be written up.
$112,000 worth of tickets were issued in just 6 days from Mr. Anti-lockdown mayor.
My gosh.
And by the way, Paladin better damn well have been rushing to the scene of the lockdown crime because they were raking in about $65 an hour per security guard to the tune of $12 million. For that first year alone, that was the amount of their contract for increased COVID security. Again, that's in exclusive documents. We'll publish them all. Maybe some other journalists will get curious and read through them. Maybe one of the other campaigns might read through them because there's some pretty heavy-handed enforcement at the hands of Mayor Patrick Brown in Brampton.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll give a shout out to some independent media out there that covers Brampton and Mississauga. It's called The Pointer. It's online. And they being like a dog on a bone with all the shenanigans that is occurring in Brampton. I would hasten to say, Sheila, Brampton might just be the most corrupt municipality in our great Dominion. It is unbelievable the number of sneaky insider stuff that happens in that city and has been happening since 2018 when Mayor Brown somehow got elected. But, you know, it would all be so funny except for the fact that I find this individual dangerous, Sheila, for somehow, like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, he plays his flute and he gets these massive groups, you know, to come follow him, which was evident in the Sunday announcement in which he was saying he was running for the Conservative Party. I don't see him winning, but I see him maybe becoming a kingmaker for
a kamikaze candidate, as they say out here in Alberta.
Because I see him, Jean Charest. He loves Jean Charest. There's a photo of a young Patrick Brown where the poster in his bedroom is Jean Charest. Yeah, not the Fonz from Happy Days or Farrah Fawcett Majors in that iconic red swimsuit, but Jean Charest. That's what I want on my wall when I'm a teenager. But the thing is, Sheila, is Jean Charest would be every bit as much of a disaster leading the Conservative Party. And of course, the quid pro quo is Patrick thinks he's done his time in the penalty box being mayor of Brampton. That's too, Bush League for him. He wants to be a federal MP again, and that would be the quid pro quo with Charest finding him a riding somewhere. It doesn't matter. That's... You know, when it comes to Patrick Brown, folks, it's all about the power. It's not about public service. It's not about doing good things. It's about having a title. And, that's why, he has absolutely nothing to do with Brampton. In fact, when he was running for election, Sheila, many times he referred to Brampton as Barrie, where he was an MP. So what does that tell you? But this is what I find disturbing, the fact that these two cretins might somehow really skew the Conservative Party leadership nomination.
Well, hopefully Albertans stand in their way. I can't imagine Westerners voting for Patrick Brown or Jean Charest, the two pro-carbon tax candidates. For Patrick Brown left the Ontario PC Party in complete disarray and turmoil because of his embrace of the carbon tax. And he hasn't said that he has renounced the carbon tax. All he said is, now's not the right time to raise it. Okay, Patrick, when is the right time to make the cost of living more expensive for all Canadians? Tell me when the right time is. If now is not the right time, when is it? Because I think there's no good time for that.
You see, this is exactly why Patrick Brown is a weasel. Instead of using these weaselly words, how about coming out strongly against the carbon tax and saying...
Because he's not. Yeah, he's not against it. So at least he's halfway honest here.
Well, Sheila, you're 100% right. After he threw the social conservatives under the bus as the Ontario PC leader, he then threw the fiscal conservatives under the bus. His very first policy announcement after becoming leader was a Made in Ontario carbon tax. He announced that at the Canadian Club, I believe it was, in Toronto. The room fell silent, and finally somebody in the back went, no, right? And the die was cast that we got to get rid of this guy. Forget about the rumors of sexual impropriety. It was really these policy flip-flops, huge policy flip-flops, carbon tax, sex ed, that, paved the way to do that incredible palace coup. I think it was January 25th, 2018. I was riveted. And then that Cersei-like walk of shame down the back of the Queen's Park steps to that salt-covered
salt-stained minivan.
What an inglorious ending to such a power-mad megalomaniac. But, and I'll just check with our folks to see, do we have any Patrick Brown videos? Because they never get tired. Right here.
Let's roll that one.
He must be the party that cultural communities can trust. As a leader, I will restore the faith that was broken by two policies that should never have seen the light of day: the barbaric cultural practices tip line and the niqab ban. Other leadership candidates are taking advice from the same senior advisors who decided to launch those policies in the 2015 Conservative federal election campaign. Advisors who never admitted the harm those policies did both to Canada and to our party. And to this day, continue to defend their decisions and back those policies. Advisors who have never admitted their mistake. Those policies in the 2015 campaign gave us Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. They attempted to normalize intolerance and served only to stifle Canadians' right to religious freedom. I will never back down from defending religious freedom. Yes. A winning Conservative Party led by me will passionately fight for our core Conservative value of protecting religious freedom. We will proudly lean into it. We will win, and we will end the Liberal Party practice of tokenizing diverse Canadians. The Conservative Party will win while proudly standing against Bill 21.
Fighter, leader, winner. First of all, Sheila, when he says I would never back down when it comes to fighting for religious freedoms, did you notice his announcement speech took place on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. when presumably most Christians are in church, right? Yeah. What does that tell you? Secondly, what is wrong with a barbaric cultural hotline? Is Patrick Brown okay with barbarism occurring? And when I say barbarism, I'm talking about things that don't get a lot of attention because it's not all that politically correct. FGM, female genital mutilation, Sheila, which in some circles in the left has been rebranded as female genital beautification, FGB. You would want girls and young women to undergo that in an underground way, Patrick Brown? You wouldn't want somebody to come forward and blow the whistle on that? This guy is despicable, Sheila.
This guy is a real piece of work because he's sitting there saying that he's against tip lines. As he was talking about that, I was like, COVID non-compliance tip line Brampton. What did I find? Reporting non-compliance. You know, this guy's against tip lines? Oh, the hell he is. He just doesn't like one that protects women and girls from cultural and religious-based violence. Yeah. He is perfectly fine with the tip line. He set one up where you can report non-compliant food establishments, personal service settings, or recreational water facilities. What does that even mean? You're reporting the lake now for COVID non-compliance? Like, what is happening there? You can call the Peel Public Health line and report restaurants, bars, mobile food trucks, grocery stores, convenience stores, discount and big box retailers, tattoo studios, piercing shops, aesthetic salons, nail salons, hairdressing and barbershops, public pools, spas, beaches, splash pads, and wading pools. Now, those are outside. So how are those non-compliant? I guess they have different crazy rules in Brampton, but there's several tip lines that they have set up in the Peel region, including directly in Brampton, where you can report non-compliance for COVID. So he is definitely not against tip lines. He set up one of his own. He just is playing. Here you go. He's just unbelievable. He's just playing to certain communities, which, I mean, is the bigotry of low expectations, actually. So, yeah. Because I don't think that normal Muslims are fine with cultural and gender-based violence. I really don't. But, you know, Patrick Brown is conflating people who participate in cultural-based violence and gender-based violence with your everyday Muslim friends and neighbors. And that's ridiculous. We know the difference. He should too.
I'm with you, Sheila, but talk about kowtowing to his base. Let's not kid the kidders here. Do you think that the vast majority of Canadians go to bed at night fretting about religious freedom in this country. No. It's all about right now, as far as I can tell, the economy. Going to the gas station and seeing $2 a liter.
But I'm from Alberta, where we lock up more pastors than China. So.
That's right. I exclude Alberta from that, But what I'm saying, Sheila, is that right now, where Canadians are getting brutalized, it's by going to the gas station, going to the supermarket, seeing their utility bills come in. That is what we need policies to address, to lower the cost of living, which is going out of control in this country. And there are certain markets, too. Vancouver, the Greater Toronto Area, if you are young and you aspire to home ownership, good luck. You might want to inquire to see if they have a 75-year mortgage, because that might be how long you have to pay off an average bungalow in the city of Toronto. So, Sheila, I think this was a real fumble on his part. And by the way, that was a packed venue. Did you notice how muted the applause was? It wasn't, a standing ovation or anything like that. I remember years ago when I went to see Maxime Bernier speak to his supporters out in the airport area. And I'll tell you, Sheila, when he said that one of his policy planks was to defund the CBC, I thought the roof was going to cave in. I've never heard such. And by the way, and that's another thing that is connected to Canadians and the cost of living. Why should we have to pay some $1.5 billion a year for something virtually nobody is watching anymore? So yeah, that's more green in your jeans too, by defunding this network, not abolishing it, just like any other private sector firm. Sink or swim, go sell some ads. I know, what a concept, right? But get off your ricotta cheese candy ass and actually work for your money instead of getting corporate welfare.
Remind me to talk to you about Scott Hall. He passed away.
No, Razor Ramon?
He did. He had a heart attack.
Oh, no.
I know. I'm sorry to put a damper on the show, but just as you were doing your little wrestling spiel, it just reminded me to mention Scott Hall to you. And sorry to do that to you on air, because I know you are a Razor Ramon fan.
100%. One of the, just at 63, way too young, one of the best lines ever by Razor Ramon. Funny how a guy called Razor Ramon, Latino,
that's
was
Razor Ramon walking into heaven.
I know.
Like that.
But that time when he would hand his belt to somebody, a ring attendant, and he would always say this, Sheila, "Hey, Chico, something happened to the gold. Something going to happen to you, Chico." Throw his toothpick at him. Oh, that is bad news. He was a great entertainer. Had a myriad of problems, of course, which became part of the act at one point.
Lean in. Just lean in.
Absolutely. But you know what? Before, not to get off on a tangerine here, but, this is the sad thing about professional wrestling. And it's when so many athletes in a peak physical condition, I might add, get into typically their 50s or early 60s, like Razor Ramon, and they just die in their sleep. Their body just shuts down. It's so sad. Professional wrestlers and cyclists.
Bodybuilders too.
Bodybuilders are up there too.
These vain men, these professional bodybuilders, I appreciate their commitment and their hard work, but those muscles and the stuff you take to get those muscles, they're going to kill you. Just be able to change a tractor tire. Have those kind of muscles. I like those kind of muscles.
That's why I've never been a bodybuilder or wrestler or professional cyclist, Sheila.
For your health.
Yeah, I'm too young to die.
You're just avoiding physical labor for your health. One more thing before we move on from Patrick Brown, I think we've spent far too long on him as it is. I don't have anything personal against Patrick Brown. I don't like his policies, and I think he's sneaky and a liar, as evidenced in his behavior. But also on this report a COVID scofflaw tip line, if you go down to the bottom, you can report price gouging. And so I'd like to report Patrick Brown for his attempted price gouging with the carbon tax. So there's a number there that you can call and report. So I guess he's concerned about the cost of living. but he's perfectly fine with a carbon tax.
What is the definition, Sheila, of price gouging? You know, when the government gets
I don't
into
want
things.
the government getting involved, right?
Well, you know, when Pierre Trudeau in the mid-'70s started to think that he could regulate the economy, I don't know if you remember wage and price controls, 6 and 5. So goods could only go up a maximum of 6%. And salaries could only go up a maximum of 5%. Oh, what a shocker. It was a disaster. Turns out Ottawa can't regulate how the free market economy works. So when I see, a price gouging thing, I want to know what the devil in the details is because, like you said, maybe Patrick Brown, for all the money he spent on security guards, there's a gouger when it comes to your taxes. He's not paying that out of his pocket. He's not going to his best friend, Waleed Solomon, and getting money to pay for that. You, Mr. and Mrs. Bramptonian or Peel Regioner, you're paying that.
Yeah, I'd like to report the government for price gouging with all the taxes they slap onto a liter of fuel. We should get to some of these chats.
Yes.
And again, I want to reiterate, I can't stay late today because I have a member of the Trudeau family to interview.
I can't wait.
I know. And you know what? I was like, how do I approach this interview? Because I certainly don't. Kyle's his own man. I don't want to define him by his outlandish brother any more than I want to be defined by my brother or my sister, right? He's an accomplished guy on his own. So I think I'll just lead with my chin, get that out of the way. It's pretty interesting that you're, this kind of freedom-minded guy in a family of authoritarian grifters, but I don't know. I really got to button my mouth up on this interview because I'm sure he loves his brother, but just disagrees with him. So anyways, stay tuned. That's on the Gun Show this week, by the way. So if you are a subscriber to Rebel News Plus, you'll get to see that in full, and you'll get to see me struggling to keep my opinions to myself while interviewing my guests. And it's also available as a podcast for free on all the podcast platforms. And if you are listening to us on the podcast version, do leave us a 5-star review. It puts us higher up in the algorithm than CBC podcasts. And I kind of like that. So do that for me if you wouldn't mind. We should get some of these chats. And then your favorite guy, Jerry Diaz, is pulling the chute before he gets, in the middle of an investigation. So I think we should talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I hear whiffs of some financial impropriety going on at Unifor, the biggest private sector union. You know what? Good riddance, I say, to Jerry Diaz, whatever the reason is. This is a guy whose union composes every federal election anti-conservative attack ads, which is outrageous because
the resistance.
The resistance.
You're the resistance.
What if you're a Unifor member who votes conservative and supports conservatives? This is the same guy that back in October in Toronto at Unifor's head office, we went out to cover a protest by Unifor members, primarily auto workers, Sheila, as you know, who were losing their jobs if they didn't get the jab. Not only did Mr. Diaz not come out to meet the rank and file, he sent all the employees home as though there was going to be an active shooting event. He was nowhere to be seen. And then he called the cops on his own members doing a peaceful protest. So Jerry Diaz, don't let the back door hit you on your backside on the way out. You were disgraceful. But only thing is, Sheila, given Unifor being uniform, I wonder who the replacement is. I wonder if it's going to be somebody that makes you pine for the devil you knew.
Yeah, Jerry Diaz and the resistance. Again, I shouldn't say anything because my chair did give out today. But the only resistance I saw in that infamous photo was in their waistbands. They were a pretty surly looking, grumbly bunch. But yeah, Jerry Diaz is on his way out. And again, I want to reiterate, I shouldn't be casting stones. My chair gave out on air. But he is quitting, at least according to Blacklock's, amid a financial probe. Yeah. Jerry and Unifor's National Executive Board will meet March 21st to discuss the matter. I wonder where they'll meet. Maybe we should be there. Kathleen O'Keefe, spokesperson for the union, said in a statement, the union will have no further public comment. They're pretty tight-lipped, and those people don't like to shut up prior to the receipt of the investigative report. Unifor had, look at this, nearly $350 million in assets belonging to 350 15,000 members. Its accounts were cleared by auditors as recently as last June 17th. Well, this is odd. The union on February 23rd had no specific comment on Blacklock's inquiries regarding unproven allegations against Diaz. And we want to reiterate, these are unproven.
Yep.
But it goes on to say that President Diaz on January 29th, so why are we really just hearing about this now, was told he was under investigation, according to Unifor, on February 6th. Diaz, oh yeah, of course he did. He took advantage of every union benefit he could. He went on paid medical leave. Of course he did. Jerry did not make the decision to take this leave easily. We hope you respect his privacy. We're wishing him well. While on leave, Jerry will not be carrying out the responsibilities of the office of president. It's funny how these health issues just rear up anytime you get in trouble.
And Sheila, I love that line. Maybe you were going to get to it, but we can't ignore it. Thank you for long years of service to Canadian workers, Jerry Diaz said, the dumbest MP alive.
Thank you.
Seamus O'Regan,
yes.
Minister of Labor.
MP to burgle the oxygen in the House of Commons, Seamus O'Regan. He couldn't even keep his mouth shut while the guy's under investigation. Does he have does Seamus O'Regan have a communications person, or does his communications person hate him? Because I can't believe that someone allowed him to make the statement before the investigation is concluded into Jerry Diaz.
You're right, but that's what makes him so dumb. But at least you're getting. I mean, listen. When he was given the labor ministry, Seamus allegedly said, well, "What do I know about women giving childbirth?" But the funny thing is at least talk about truth in advertising by Seamus. At least talk about transparency, because and don't take my word for it, folks. Google those Unifor anti-conservative ads. Of course, if you're a Liberal member of government, you're going to thank the guy, architect of that despicable propaganda. Although, I got to admit, when it was the anti-Aaron O'Toole ad, you really can't argue that much, can you?
Oh, with the car falling apart.
The truck falling apart.
Yeah.
The 2021 O'Toole, which looks exactly what you'd think you'd get on that shady used car lot, folks.
The resistance. Like I said, the
there
only
it
resistance
is.
You can the O'Toole. I found this to be a very pretentious ad. I thought it was very uppity. Sorry, we can't all afford to drive Jerry Diaz fancy, probably made in Japan car, even though he's an auto worker rep.
It's a great point. I wonder what he does drive. I think his family
made in Germany. I feel like Germany.
You know what? I don't think he would be that flagrant. I bet he drives a GM vehicle, because I know his family has had connections with the GM, Oshawa plant, where they used to build a lot of cars and trucks. But, oh well, things like green energy plans by the province, making Ontario one of the cheapest jurisdictions in North America to one of the most expensive. That'll chase the auto production down to Michigan and Kentucky and Mississippi and what have you. So, way to go, Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty, and of course Justin Trudeau.
Canada's Rust Belt.
Yeah, that's
Thank
right.
You, Liberals.
It's sad, Sheila. Sad.
It is.
I remember, I was doing some automotive writing at the time, and when the first generation new Camaro came out, I think around 2012, they were building 440 Camaros per day, 3 8-hour shifts. They couldn't keep up with demand. Imagine that, 440 Camaros rolling off the Oshawa assembly plant. When it went to the second generation Camaro, the production was shifted to Michigan. And this has so much to do with all these so-called green energy programs, Sheila, that because the auto workers in Oshawa, they're great. Canadian auto workers are great auto workers. But when the company gets the bill for the hydro, that's when you have that come to Jesus moment. And despite the production and the quality, we got to go elsewhere because we can't afford to build these things here.
I can't remember, but I don't know where I saw it, and I'll have to dig it up maybe for Thursday's show. Just the sheer number, the cost of benefits for an auto worker over and above their salary. It's like over $100 an hour. And that's all factored into the cost of your vehicle. And you're looking at this thinking, a robot does a lot of this stuff these days. What is this for?
No.
Jerry Diaz, I guess. This is for Jerry Diaz.
Indeed. So well, let's keep an eye on that. And you said March 21st is when they're meeting?
Yes, March 21st. I wonder if they're going to get protested by their own members. That'll be fun.
I wonder if they'll still be wearing masks that day, because that's the day the mask mandate comes off, Sheila, right at midnight. So I wonder, will they still be virtue signaling by putting on the face diapers?
In Alberta, that's how we know you're an NDP voter. You're still wearing
Exactly.
the mask. Somebody on
Exactly.
Twitter described it as an NDP lawn sign for your face.
Oh, listen, it's just like a Sikh who wears a turban. He's saying, I'm part of the Sikh faith. A Muslim woman wearing a hijab, a person wearing a cross. I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
You're advertising what you believe in. And when it comes to the face diapers, what you're saying is, I'm pro big government. I'm pro-lockdown. I'm pro being told what to do. So in the days ahead, and you're absolutely right, Sheila, in a way, we should be grateful. Thank you for wearing your colors. I no longer have to mind read or have a conversation with you to find out where you stand on the political, ideological spectrum. I just have to look at what's covering your face.
Yeah, your mask and a woman's place is in her Union reusable grocery bag is everything I need to know. Let's get through some of these chats because again, I stress I cannot go late.
Yes.
We've got one from Kane Enmark says, I'm super excited. I'm going to the 2022 AGM in Red Deer in April. That's the UCP AGM. I'm voting Kenny out as leader. So he's got a leadership review. And he's not polling very well. And in Alberta, if an election were held today, despite our robust economy, because while the rest of the world suffers because of the price of a barrel of oil, we do very well here because of that. And I think we're in a budgetary surplus after 6 or 7 years of just a catastrophic economy here in Alberta. Things have just completely done a 180 and it's just skyrocketing. But even still, even though that's what Jason Kenney was counting on, the return to freedom and the robust economy that's reviving itself because of a war in Europe, among other things, Rachel Notley would win the election if it were held today. And that's bad, very bad.
That is staggering. And that said, Sheila, I want to ask you, since you live in that province, to look into your crystal ball. What do you think is going to happen at that conference? Is it going to be a proverbial wrist slapping on Premier Kenney, or are we going to see a tectonic shift?
I think it is today, and I'm sorry that I don't know this a little better, but I think today is the by-election in Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo. And Brian Jean, former leader of the Wild Rose, he ran for the leadership of the combined party, the UCP. He lost to Jason Kenney, and so he just kind of went away for a little bit. And I don't blame him. I don't think he went away because he lost. I think he went away because it was the right time to regroup. He had lost his house in a fire. He had lost his mom. He had lost his son. He got married and had a new baby, all while he was running for the leadership of the Wild Rose after Daniel Smith destroyed it. Yep. So I think it was like 35 days in between Daniel Smith destroys the party and the general election was happening in Alberta. And in that time, he announced that he's going to run. He loses his son. He doesn't take time off. He keeps campaigning through. He wins the leadership of the Wild Rose, forms official opposition in Alberta. And so he's just been given her since then. So I get why he took a step back. But he's running in a by-election right now because the MLA there made the move to federal politics. So he thought, now's my time. He's running specifically against Jason Kenney. He said, elect me MLA, and I will run against Jason Kenney for leadership. And he beat Jason Kenney's hand-picked candidate for the nomination there, just like smoked the hand-picked candidate. So that should tell you how disgruntled conservatives are with Jason Kenney, and it sounds like they want a mulligan on the leadership here.
Wow. That, I think that bodes very darkly for what is going to come up in the weeks ahead, Sheila. And, the sad thing is, this is a self-inflicted wound by Premier Kenney. You said earlier in their show, Sheila, the province of Alberta has rounded up and jailed more pastors than the nation of China. And
this year, yep. They have. We've got one still in jail, Pastor Art Pawlowski. Sunday, Jason Kenney made an announcement about the increased funding for places of worship. And I'm for this. Usually I'm kind of against government spending, but this is in reaction to the 50-plus churches that were burned over last summer that everybody seems to have forgotten about and nobody really cared about in the first place. So this is increased security grants for places of worship, which is great, but I hope they catch the maniacs who are locking up pastors and chaining off churches while we're at it, if we care so much about religious freedom. And I think a lot of the Premier's own rhetoric about churches that he labeled scofflaws played into some of the vandalism against churches. And when he was asked by Sid Fizzard, a Rebel News journalist, about Pastor Art, who is still languishing in jail for the crime of giving a speech at the Coutts blockade to the truckers. He never engaged in any blockades at all. And they arrested him under a law designed to attack pipeline bombers. When asked about that, he basically accused Pastor Art of incitement to violence. Art goes out of his way to say, we can resist the government. It has to be peaceful civil disobedience, peaceful. The Premier makes a statement saying, well, you just can't go around inciting people to violence, blah, 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 blah. This is the second time that he's actually made this statement about incitement to violence or violence happening at Coutts, and there's been none.
My question is, does Jason Kenney really believe this, or is this an ongoing policy he seems to have, Sheila, of bending the knee to the leftists, the progressives, the Marxists, the NDP voters, et cetera? Because if I know Alberta like I think I know Alberta, and I lived there for 2 years of my life, if Jason Kenney basically governed like DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and Alberta was like the state of Florida, we're not having this conversation anymore.
Yeah, I think he doesn't know how to get off this. Like, he can reopen, he can get rid of the vaccine passports, he can get rid of the mask, he can get rid of all the restrictions, which he has. But he cannot seem to undo this one thing. Yeah. And it comes directly from the government. It was not, many of Art's troubles stem from an Alberta Health Services secret court order, as in bureaucrats from Alberta Health Services went before a judge, basically got a secret court order, and that was the thing that was used to control Pastor Art and his church. So Jason Kenney can't say, oh, there's a separation between the courts and the government, and we cannot direct the courts. This is their court order that caused many of Pastor Art's problems.
So sad. Well, Sheila, we're up against a hard break at 1. We have 2 minutes to go. I'm going to keep my mouth shut, and you read the remaining chats.
Yes, let's read the remaining chats, and then I'm going to pull the chute. But don't worry, because we'll go probably late on Thursday, so people will get their money's worth. By the way, this used to just be a 1-hour show instead of like an hour and 15 or 20 or 25 minutes. Okay, so TAC178, this is my friend from Twitter. He says, some American centavos for you to enjoy. Wow, that's like $8 Canadian. Thank you so much. Yankee, for some reason, sends us $1 and says, we have 3 chats. Thank you, Yankee. Yankee. Bill CF7 gives us $1. When is Rebel going to interview Pierre Poilievre? We're doing our best. We promise you. We've extended the invitation to all the campaigns. We want to talk to all of them. And nobody's going to get a softball interview from us at all. For example, I want to know why Pierre Poilievre didn't run last time. Mm-hmm. What happened there? Anyway, Paul Otto Newman, $5. Wasn't Pierre Trudeau the only Western leader to attend Leonid Brezhnev's funeral? I don't know, but I know that he broke the embargo and parted ways with our American friends with regard to Cuba. And I don't know why people travel to Cuba to bolster the horrible, horrible government there. Yeah. Stand with the Americans and stand with Cubans in Florida. Go to Florida, don't go to Cuba. And I think we're all caught up. I think we're done. I got to go.
Fantastic. Sheila, thank you so much. You can whip off the set anytime and do that interview I'm sure everyone's looking forward to. Thank you to Olivia and Efren in the control room. Thank you to all of you folks that gave us some do-re-mi. It's how we keep the lights on. Tomorrow there'll be 2 other rebels here for your added enjoyment on Hump Day. In the meantime, Sheila and I will be back on Thursday. And also in the meantime, folks, as always, stay sane.
The incitement to violence claim I want to address directly. Jason Kenney, I have a question. I'm not being facetious or humorous. I really need to know. Are you a moron? Seriously, I have to know if I'm dealing with an intellectually handicapped individual. You realize that speech is published and available to the public, for which you claim that he incited violence. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go slow so that you can catch this. 3 times in that speech, Archer explicitly states, I am not talking about violence. I am talking about peaceful resolution. I am not talking about guns and swords. What kind of brainless individual could interpret that as incitement to violence? Quote from Jason Kenney. That individual has all the rights of any individual under the Canadian legal system. They are presumed presumed innocent until proven guilty, of course, in our system of law. Is that a Freudian slip? They have a right to access to counsel. That individual or any other individual has all the same legal rights as anybody, end quote. So, actually, Kenny, that individual does not have the same rights as any individual. You arrested him and several other pastors in Alberta for keeping their church open, while you drank whiskey at Sky Palace with your buddies free of legal consequences. Liquor stores, marijuana shops, and Walmarts were allowed to operate, but church was deemed illegal and unessential by you.